This is Chat GPT. Today we're going to be using the mini model, which is free for everyone. The demonstrations that I do today, you'll be able to replicate on your own when you use Chat GPT yourself. Usually the model that I use is a 4, which I'll show you as well, but that comes with a paid subscription. So we're going to see what you have access to without a subscription, just hopping onto the website. The main difference between mini and the full 4.0 version is that 4 can remember your conversations, so draw upon previous knowledge from past conversations you've had, whereas mini is more like a one-off thing. Like you just have a random question, you'll ask mini and it'll answer you. And if you've asked it in the past, it won't remember that you've asked it before or you've talked about this before. Some other differences is that 4 can generate AI imagery, whereas mini doesn't have that capability. Mini is just exactly as the name implies, just a smaller version of 4, but you can still get a lot done with it. I'm going to show you a bit about what it can do. Let's take a look at some everyday examples. Say you have a child in middle school and they need help with their math homework. I know me for one, I'm not that great with math. So anytime my son is like, I can't figure this problem out, I usually ask your dad. But thanks to Chat GPT, I can now help him with it and we can both learn together. So I'm going to copy an algebra problem that he might have on his homework, and we're going to see how Chat GPT can help with such things. So here's the problem. I asked Chat GPT, can you break down this problem for me and explain how to solve it? Okay, so now it's broken down the problem. This year, a salesman sells a total of $60,000 worth of steak knives by going door to door. This represents a 20% increase from the year before. What is the value of his sales last? ChatGPT says, sure, let's break down the problem step by step from last year. So it's broken down the elements of the problem. It's giving me a formula to figure out how to solve this problem. And now it's plugging in the various parts of the problem into the formula it's created for me, and then it does the math. So it shows how to do the problem. If you're doing this with your child, you can avoid the part where it gives you all the answers and you yourself can look at the answers and make sure that you guys are doing it correctly. It breaks down everything. One thing I will say though, the formulas are usually on point and I've never had an issue with the formulas, but sometimes ChatGPT's calculations aren't always correct. If you decide to use this method, I would take the formulas and do the work yourself and not just assume that it's done the math correctly. ChatGPT can be a little dumb at times, such as this is an ongoing example that shows that ChatGPT doesn't necessarily know everything. So I'm going to ask it, how many R's are in strawberry? It's thinking. It actually got it right this time. This was a problem that became kind of viral on Reddit, that ChatGPT for the life of it could not figure out how many R's were in the word strawberry, and even in multiple cases spelled it wrong, like STRARWBERRY. I think it probably got it right this time because I was testing it out earlier and I also gave it a math equation. So it's approached it in a math point of view. Sometimes you're not going to get the most accurate answers from ChatGPT, so just be careful with that. I just wanted to warn you for future use. Another way that you can utilize ChatGPT is by asking it to help you with your to-do list for the day. So I'm going to start a new tab so that it's not in that math sort of mind frame, and give it a couple tasks that I have to do today. Another point I want to make is that you have to be pretty specific about what you would like ChatGPT to do. So I'm going to be non-specific with this first, and let's see what happens. Feed my pets, walk each dog individually, pick my kids up from school, do my homework, work, find time to crochet, create a schedule for me. All right, let's see what it says. Okay, so let's take a look at the schedule that ChatGPT created based off of this information that I gave it. So it has me waking up at 6:30 in the morning. That's pretty reasonable. We feed the pets by 7, 7:30 to 8. We have breakfast and family time. From 8 to 8:30, we'll walk the dogs individually, giving each dog 15 minutes. And then it says adjust the duration based on the number of dogs and their needs. So I actually have 3 dogs. I would add another 15 minutes to that. Then we'll drop off the kids from school. And then from 9 to 12 p.m., I have work. Then I have a lunch break, continue work until 3. And then I pick the kids up at 3. Then it's scheduled me a break time, homework time from 4 to 5, evening walks with the dogs, dinner from 6 to 7, and crochet from 7 to 8. Then we have wind down time, final pet care, and bedtime. This is actually a pretty good schedule that's put together. And now it's given me some tips for success, prioritize tasks, use timers so we stay on the schedule, be flexible, combine activities where possible, and make sure you're practicing self-care. And then it has some tips on how you can stay organized with this. I can be a pretty disorganized person. Creating these daily schedules is one thing I do with ChatGPT a lot, just to help me stay focused on my day. So I found that this is a really great way to use this program to help out in day to day. It also has helped me realize that sometimes I take on too much in one day. I've had schedules that were created for me that took me all the way to 12 midnight because I was just trying to do way too much during the day, and ChatGPT tried to fit it all in one day, and the only way it could do it was like have me basically waking up at 5 and going to bed at 12. It's like, oh, okay, so maybe I need to relax a little bit. All right, so that's one example. Another example of how we can use ChatGPT is you can use it to summarize articles. You can use it to summarize maybe test results that you've gotten from your doctor that you maybe don't understand yet and haven't had a chance to talk to your doctor about. I am going to copy an article about AI, or just a section of it, and see how ChatGPT can summarize this for me in plain language. This is great if you're like interested in doing your own research and you've come across a scientific journal article, but you don't necessarily understand all the terminology and the language that it's using, but you really want to know what it's saying. So you'll say, can you summarize this for me in plain language? All right, and now I'm going to paste this article. So it's broken down, this big article, into small chunks that are a bit easier to understand. So this article is one about AI and climate change and what it's doing to both help and hinder climate change. So it's saying that in this article, it states that AI improves weather forecasts and climate models, energy management. It summarizes a real life example that the article gave. It's also summarized the downsides that were stated, basically made everything a bit easier to digest. So like I've said, I've used this when I've had like blood work done and I don't necessarily understand what the test results are saying and I don't want to wait for my appointment the next week. I'll put in my test results and say, hey, can you explain this to me? And it'll break it down like this and just put it in really clear, plain language. Another thing it can do is actually translate. So if you have an article or something that you want to read, but it's in a different language, or you want to share it with somebody who speaks a different language, you can say, can you translate this article for me into Spanish? So I pasted the article again, and now it's going to think, and there we go. It's translated it into Spanish, and pretty quickly too. And it's pretty accurate as well from my experience. Most people who speak another language who have checked it have said that it's a pretty good translation. In the past, like the translation apps that we've had in the past aren't always the best, but this one is pretty good.
Does it get confused if there's multiple commands in one prompt? Like if you put in that same article and asked it like to give you that same breakdown in plain language, but in Spanish, like, would that be difficult for it to do, or you need to do things one at a time, or can you do like complex commands?
It might get a little confused doing a few commands at the same time. If the commands are clear enough, it might be able to pull it off. 4 is better for that because it has more of a thinking brain, whereas Mini is just like more about straightforward tasks. But we can try it out and see what happens. Can you summarize this article in plain language, but share your response in Italian? So yes, it was able to do that. But that does bring up a good point. When you're making queries, you do want to be as clear and specific as possible because certain queries might actually confuse it.
Can it do things like if you ask it a math problem that has certain actions go before other ones? Can it do the sort of order of operations? Like, does it understand that?
I'm going to put in another algebra equation to show you that. All right, so I'm just going to say solve this. So this is an algebra equation that has those different parts. Okay, so it's broken it down on how to do it. This gives you the step-by-step process. In the case of math, I would take the formula that it created and like plug it in myself. When it comes to factual things, this is an important thing. I will ask it, what are your sources? Mini only goes off of the facts, but 4 will make stuff up just because it is a more creative system. So what I've had to do when using 4 is say, do not make up any facts and cite your sources when you give me information. Let's jump on 4 for a second to give an example. I'm gonna say, tell me about Dillinger, the famous corgi. Let's see. Dillinger is my corgi. There's no available information on the internet about my corgi, but let's see what Chat GPT has to say about this. Chat GPT focused on like the traits of corgis, which is like common knowledge, and just use that to be like, oh yeah, that must be why Dillinger is so famous. Do you actually know about Dillinger, or did you make that up? I have to admit, I don't have specific information about a famous corgi named Dillinger. I used what I know about popular trends and pet influencers to give a general answer. But if Dillinger is a real or specific corgi you're referring to, I don't have details on him specifically.
That's interesting. So it sort of makes an assumption based on what's in your question. So it's like, if you're asking about this, there must be, like that's sort of a given.
Me and my kids have used this to do research on various topics. We've had to tell them cite these sources because like we're doing research. We want to know that our facts are correct. So I will do another example. We'll stick with corgis since in this thread it's already thinking about corgis. Please tell me the history of how the corgi breed came to be, but cite your sources. Okay, so now it's giving me actual information. So far, it all looks legit. Okay, and then there's the
your
sources at the end.
Yeah, and they give you links to those sources too, so you can further explore those to see what else you can find out, or to just even compare the information against what you're seeing here. So you can go to the source itself.
So let's ask Minnie the same question about corgis and see, because this is the one that you guys will have access to. Okay, tell me about the history of corgis and cite your sources. This was a straightforward question for Minnie, so it was pretty much able to create the same sort of details as 4 was able to do. So if you ask it a factual question, it'll give you a factual answer. But let's see how it does with the more creative things. 4 is great for like brainstorming if you're a writer or you're trying to come up with some creative process. Like 4 is great for that, but Mini is great for just getting the facts, which we see here. But let's see if we gave it a creative inquiry. Let's see what it says. It says, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, that's fair. I mean, that's good.
Great for the facts, which is awesome since this is the one that is available to everyone. So if you use Apple, they have a really great app. I haven't downloaded the app on my Android, but I do think that there is one. Otherwise, you can just use the website, and it's pretty much the same. But I did want to share some of the things that 4 can do that Mini can't. If anybody's interested in getting a subscription in the future. So let's say it's Halloween, right? So generate a cute Halloween graphic featuring a black cat in a pumpkin for a Halloween card, kawaii style, because that's my favorite. So Chat GPT uses Dolly to create its images. So this is a Dolly image that it's created from the prompt I gave it. It's pretty cute.
Is there a way of teaching that you need to do?
I do tend to be more conversational with it because I tend to use it to help me with editing and brainstorming. So I think of it more as a co-collaborator than a machine, but you can absolutely just like give it machine prompts and it'll answer. I would say the best way to do prompts is just through trial and error to see how specific you need to be, how clear you need to be. You need a subject. If you want to focus on one thing, you should mention like what it is that they should be focusing on. If there's something that you don't want to include, you can add that. Just like be as clear as possible to get what you want. But in the same way, if you're like too specific to the point where it can't really niche down that far, it might get a little muddled. So let's say you're cooking and you want to convert something. So like 2 tablespoons equals how many cups? So it did the math to convert tablespoons to cups for me. Time in London.
Okay.
It started to be specific because it wanted to make sure that it was saying the right thing. So it says, I understand you're looking for the time in London. While I don't have real-time capabilities to provide the exact time, I can offer some helpful information. So that might be a 4 thing. 4 has a real-time data, whereas Mini, I think, just has a set amount of data.
So you can be kind of bare bones about what you put in there. It might give you more information, like if you're not real specific about that.
And you can tell it, like, be concise.
It's just a good time to sort of remind you that if you see something that seems wild, it makes you feel all sorts of ways and it is almost unbelievable. Check it against other sources, especially like straightforward news sources. If you cannot find it somewhere, chances are that someone is trying to manipulate you. Please be aware of that.
AI really is a double-edged sword because it creates all of these mistruths, but that's at the same time you can use it to uncover actual things. If you see something that shocks you, you can throw it into Chat GPT, like, did this actually happen? And it'll help you right away. I haven't received any information like for middle school or elementary school right now. I do know that most children
early in the year,
at this point do all of their work on computers that are monitored by the teachers. So the teachers see everything that they're doing and everything that's going on. And I think that's one way that they're trying to combat academic dishonesty. Another way is by giving students like these really creative projects that a computer just wouldn't be able to figure out because you need a human brain with a human imagination to even put it together. I've seen them do it by asking very personal questions like, what is your dream car? Research your dream car, get all the features and the additional things that you would want to add to this, and then like do a budget report on how you would be able to find it. Like that's not something that you could easily plug in to give you an answer to. You actually have to sit there and do the work.
Something that would require a little bit more personal insight. I saw something a while ago, and this is one person's opinion, but somebody saying, I need AI to do things like you said, like set up my schedule and like, do research so I can have time to do creative like draw and write and all of that. I know people have very different opinions about that, but I think that makes a lot of sense. It's like if you can get Chat GPT to do the things that it is good at and that involve skills that might not be your best thing like math, right? That's one thing. But the creative thing is always going to have this human need for it.
I do think that with the emergence of this technology, a lot of our ways of doing things are going to have to change. So education in itself is going to have to change in reflecting more on the person individually. Now, education is no longer a one-size-fits-all type thing because we have to focus on the individual so that we know a computer didn't write this. And then we also have to ask ourselves, if a computer can do this in less than a minute, why are we making people spend hours doing the same thing?
And there might be a reason, but we have to actually think about it, right?
We're losing certain skills, but at the same time, we're making things a lot more accessible for people too. So I think it is important important to really focus on that. Like the fact that Chat GPT can just translate something in like a snap for somebody who doesn't speak the language that they need to comprehend this, the fact that it's able to summarize it in plain language so that anybody can understand what's going on, I really feel like that adds a lot of value and is worth sort of navigating the darker side of it. A lot of people are like, just get rid of AI altogether. But I'm like, no, there are a lot of useful things that it can do that'll help a lot of people.